and things like that. And then
Yep.
what does it do to the cost? What is RTMP versus like this fat one pipe coming down? Is it the same?
Would be the same. Yeah.
Okay. So RTMP doesn't like change the actual bandwidth. It just is a way to connect the two.
It's just ingest.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right,
I mean, go ahead. Yeah.
So Colin, why don't we look at some of the, I'm not sure I don't think we would want to take a chance on the 7th, or I'm sorry, the 11th with single stream.
Right.
So we would want, if we did something on the 11th together, it would be RTMP.
Sure. Yeah.
And so the questions in my mind are, what risks do we have with RTMP so we're using StreamYard, RTMP. It's a simple, easy to use tool. One of the things I'm guessing, and this is just, again, me asking questions, is that they're probably sitting in a larger, having been purchased by Hopin, they're probably sitting in a pretty bold infrastructure. And so how does your infrastructure that is sending the StreamClick signal compare?
I'm guessing it's not that different. You basically, at a certain scale, you have to use cloud hosting. So we're on EC2. So, and just like kind of almost half the rest of the world, anyone that's hosted on Amazon AWS or EC2 is where is going to be very similar to our infrastructure. The one thing that they'll probably have is multiple levels of redundancy. So if a stream goes down, they'll have something to automatically pick it back up. I'm guessing. Like, what if Amazon US East goes down? Do they have backup with Azure, or do they have Google Cloud or Oracle or something like that? I don't know who or what their infrastructure provider is, but they're almost certainly externally hosted on something like that.
Right.
And they're a much bigger fish, so they might have an easier time getting an Amazon rep on the phone if there were a major outage in the middle of an event. But fundamentally, we spin up a cloud EC2 instance, and then we stream off of that, and then they're almost certainly running some sort of cloud instances to do their compositing as well.
But and Paul, if you've been through this, like, we don't have to spend time on it, but are you, like in our case, we're putting a lot of extra firepower towards, we know we're overkilling the number of nodes and containers that we're spinning up. Just we don't want that to be for this short event. We don't want to take the chance, and then we'll just spin them down. So do you have the ability to make sure that there's plenty of firepower for that 45 minutes?
Yeah, well, for the compositor, it's a single instance. It's one computer that does the compositing. So it's just as much horsepower as you want to put on that one machine. So you can bump the CPU on that one machine, but there's nothing you can do horizontally. It's not like you need 25 EC2 instances. Doesn't change our ability to output a stream. So you can imagine what we're looking at. What you're seeing on your screen right now is our 4 videos. Right. And we want to take those 4 videos, composite them into a single video, and then send that over RTMP to Phoenix. And so that's effectively, just imagine doing a screen recording off of the machine you're looking at right now, and then sending that screen recording out to Phoenix. That's exactly what the cloud instance is doing. It's taking your videos, turning them into a single capture, and then sending that capture out.
So that's how it works. Is essentially a recording of the screen.
That's exactly how it works. Yeah, it's a headless browser. So it's not entirely, technically not headless, but it's a browser running on a computer in the cloud somewhere. It's just a supercomputer by comparison to your home laptop. It does run Chrome.
RTMP basically is that the way?
No, RTMP is a transport protocol for video signal.
Okay.
So it's a way to get, just like TCP/IP or HTTP.
Okay.
That's why it ends in P, because it's a protocol, or a language effectively for taking a video on one computer and sending it to a video on another computer and then playing it back on that. Not even doing the playback, but just receiving it and preparing it for playback on the other computer.
Okay.
So just think of it as the wire between those 2 points. So it's the wire between StreamYard and Phoenix, or between StreamClick and Phoenix potentially, or StreamClick and Millicast.
So, yeah. So what I'm trying to get at is, again, mostly for the 11th, tactically.
Yep.
We need to minimize everything in terms of risk, right? We're even
absolutely, yeah.
We're even taking away, if you will, in our case, we won't be using Promethean. We just don't. We want to minimize, like, the interaction. Let the stream happen for 45 minutes, and and make sure the mobile experience is awesome. So I'm just trying to ask any question that would be in. Again, I look at the 11th for both of us as, like, we know StreamYard is a tactical move for us, because we're not going to have a relationship with them like we're going to have with you guys. We're not on the phone with their CTO like this on a Saturday. So so we know we can get a lot of things done together. We just don't want to do anything stupid on the 11th. So the reason I'm asking the questions is, if we were to use StreamClick with RTMP, what are our risks, compared to a StreamYard, as mundane as, well, like you just said, they might have a better failover, which makes sense, right?
Yep, absolutely.
So anything else?
They also have, I mean, their technology is more battle tested, period. I mean, we are earlier and newer. This restreaming, this whole sending our stream out to Phoenix, and again, it's not going to benefit me or us for us to sell you a false bill of goods. So I'm always going to just tell you the facts on the ground, and you can make decisions around that. So I'm just fully transparent on, I'll just pretend I work for Peak, basically, so that you get the real deal. We launched the Restreamer in March, and it was started in December. I think most of the work happened in November, December. It was up in testing, and we had it all in beta running through January, February, and then it's hit full public stride in March. But again, we don't have 10,000 customers. We're pre-beta, pre-revenue, so we have a small stable of early adopters. But in terms of what could go wrong, I think that in terms of risk on the 11th, and then even going forward, we don't have 50,000 or 50 million streams under our belt. We have 500. And so that I think is an area of risk, is that we might encounter a bug that hasn't been seen and would be potentially even easy to fix, but it's just, if it happens at the wrong moment and we haven't seen it before, that's obviously less likely with StreamYard, because StreamYard's got millions or tens of, probably maybe hundreds of millions of successful streams under their belt. So that's a big one. I think, honestly, if you want me to weigh in on risks for the 11th, I think that operations is more likely to be the source of an issue. So your team, or whoever's doing the production on the day of the event, coordinating with the talent, getting them in and executing on the show, and someone forgot to, they couldn't get their mic plugged in, or, someone was sick that day and couldn't show up, and it didn't switch something on, or whatever it is. But I think it's almost certainly more likely to be human error, and potentially even, again, the lack of redundancy around the human error there. So you might have two people planning to do a thing, and then the one person, for whatever reason, their internet goes offline, and you don't have a backup human and a backup internet.
Right. Well, the good news is that this panel is only 3 people versus
sure.
the last one, and
So, yep.
again, we're going to keep it relatively low risk in the sense that we're not going to try to do any kind of interactive.
Yep.
We contemplated and still are, which I'm sure we could do with StreamClick or StreamYard, drawing a fan from out of the crowd,
right,
adding
right.
them to the panel to ask a question. And
yeah, I love that.
So I guess maybe just in this brief conversation, it sounds like we would be better staying the course with StreamYard. There is a couple of features that you guys have that they don't have, which are nice. The voice in the sky or whatever, the voice of God. But even that can be just one more complication that we don't claim to be the production company, right? So,
right.
That they essentially, once we have working with you guys, once we have that down to a science where we have trained producers on the tool who know how to bring in the talent and say, okay, let's do a mic check, blah blah blah. I mean, I was in the live event business for 10 years, so I know I know the prep and the training. I mean, we used to literally train 50 people 15 minutes before a big event, how to work our platform, right? So but those weren't necessarily, they were brand ambassadors who get there, they know they're listening, 10% of them don't, and they're screw ups, and you get rid of them right there on site. Talent's a little different, right? If they're not listening, you're not going to succeed.
Correct. Yeah.
So, that being the case, Paul, what was the feature that we were saying it'd be really nice to have yesterday that the StreamClick has?
Well, I think the collaboration between producers, multiple people coming in, collaborating. It's a little squirrely, the way StreamClick is, that everybody shares one ID.
In StreamYard.
Everyone shares an ID. It's not really a feature of their product. It's kind of, you're hacking in multiple producers. That the other thing I think more specifically was, I want predefined shots. Where I always want talent to be so they have this big screen, dominant speaker kind of a screen, and then smaller screens, and the ability to mix and match or move someone from one position to another position. They have a finite combination, and I think in StreamClick I can predefine those combinations and then just click the button to go to that position of mixing. So if you wanted to make Scott
that.
Yeah, or now you want to make Scott big and both you and me small.
I think it was. Oh yeah, was it one big and two small that we couldn't do?
That's the way they did it. Was one big like this, or one big and 2 or 3 small. Actually, I don't know if StreamClick has even small, but you
we don't yet. I mean, obviously we will.
More specifically define the configurations. I
think the thing we were the most worried about, though, right, is that you have to share the producer login.
Yeah.
And Paul, weren't you concerned that maybe that's putting a load on, like, on?
Yeah. So I don't know if I have the same problem here. Like, so all four cameras are in here. As a producer, if we get, more and more people in, are we having that same everybody sharing everybody's stream issue?
No, and I wouldn't even think you would be with StreamYard either, frankly. I think that
Okay.
as long as it's separate computers and separate networks, it's only when it's either the same computer or the same network, and then you're going to bog the network down. But if it's two different people on two different laptops on two different computers, I would say both StreamYard and StreamClick should be, that's no problem whatsoever. That's just adding more people into your total stream count at the millicast level, or at the service level. But that's where they're supposed to be able to scale to millions. So yeah, I wouldn't think that would be an issue.
Well, I think you're talking about, Paul, like as a guest, or in their case, they don't give you a separate ID. You have to use the same ID for. Right. So, is that ID somehow having to process two producers on the same ID? It's probably hard for you to know, but I think we.
Yeah, of course, I wouldn't know on StreamYard's case, but it would shock me if that caused additional load. I don't really know how they're, they're just saying log in as many times as you want from as many computers as you want, and
that seems to be their solution for having multiple producers, which we were surprised. Right. I mean, we were willing to pay to have another producer, but they don't seem to have the ability to do that.
Right.
Which seems odd.
That doesn't strike me as an area where there would be a load issue. If anything, it would be just like functional issue where you're kind of stepping on your own toes, like editing a Google Doc at the same time. But I don't imagine that would be a concern for load. That's my instinct. Of course, I didn't write their software, so
well, why don't we move on? Why don't we stay with StreamYard for the 11th? It just seems like that would be the safest. As you said, they've done millions of these, and let's look at I'm really interested in looking at the fan wall.
Sure.
I'm going to assume that you're going to be able to do the single stream, to be honest with you. For me, I don't necessarily. Paul may be a little different. I mean, it'd be different if we were trying to look at it for the 11th, but knowing that we're going to be able to do that long term, to me, the path is more, what do we do to create an experience that is really unique for all of the talent celebrities that are going to come on to Peak and create their own streams, right? So I think that's the big enchilada for us. Is what are the things we can do together to make it just super cool and different and and easy and quick, right? The one thing I did like about StreamYard is it is very, I guess, easy to get going.
Sure. Yeah, and we can learn something from that, of course, and that's a question of resourcing for the most part. It's just getting a cleaner, more streamlined UX and a more modern looking and more modern feeling overall dashboard.
Right.
Again, our target is somewhere in the middle ground from, complete novice streaming first timer type thing all the way to the other end of broadcast engineer. We're sort of targeting a prosumer range. And our first thing first is let's get the remote production suite all clean and ready for prime time, so that we can have companies like Embassy Row or TV production companies who kind of know the ropes. So we're dumbing it down less than we could, and we very likely will as we get into more of a mass market audience for the user, which is, basically what StreamYard is. It's, streaming for dummies, basically.
Yeah.
But I got to talk about FanWall because it's a really near and dear to our hearts, and it's a core part of what we're trying to build here. We're not fully ready, as you know, and it's in development, but let me give you the big picture. We want to be able to do online and collaboratively and remotely as a team, the production of, every kind of content, all the way up to something as sophisticated as, the Stephen Colbert Show. So the things you need for that, we've built most of them. But the one thing we're making, so, we have basically a virtual control room in the sky. We have cameras and mics and sources and a switcher and a prompter. And so we're building this virtual TV studio. And the one thing that we are missing is the TV audience, because the fun part of Stephen Colbert is that they film it in front of a live studio audience. And that studio audience then cheers, and you can see them respond, and they can interact back and forth. Stephen feeds off of that energy. And so bringing the fans and the virtual audience into the equation is absolutely part of our, big picture overall vision. And that starts with just getting a grid basically of, 10, 20, 30 fans into a square that you can include and cut to in your show. So just for example, if I'm showing a 2-shot of the two of you guys and you're chatting and the audience has a big reaction in the switcher, I want to be able to cut to that reaction, show the fans, and then cut back to your conversation. So that's step one, and part one is just getting those fans in together, putting them into a grid that you can then take into the switcher. So that's number one. And then number two is bringing one of those fans out of the studio audience up onto the set, like take a seat next to Stephen Colbert. And that's the part you're talking about, where then they can have that conversation and then send them back to the audience at the end of that interaction. So those are two phases, and the one builds on the other. But the second one is harder than the first. So bringing someone into this panel and then returning them back to the fan wall is kind of extra work and more to think about, more design and architecture than phase one, which is just, can we get that fan wall in place at all? Let's see if I can. Do you want me to show you in the dashboard what this would look like? Like, that's what I was planning to do here, but I don't know if that's too detailed for what you're thinking about, or for this call.
Was it Wednesday that you're going to have the fan wall, or was that the single stream on?
No, single stream launched yesterday, and 2 days ago now. And the fan wall, part one of the fan wall, the ability to create that grid of 30 fans, but not bring them up on the stage. Okay. So part one is slated to ship on Wednesday. So the challenge with the fan wall is getting them to see the return feed. So if they're watching, it's one thing to get the camera so that we can see them, but then they have to be able to see us. And so when you're in phase one, if you can imagine you're like watching a hockey game or you're watching a baseball game or something, phase one is how do we get that baseball game out of the television studio through the TV's network operations center somehow into the fan's device or onto their laptop so that they can basically watch the game and react to it in real time. So that's the part that we're working on first, is stitching in that return feed so they can watch, I don't know how much TV experience you have, but it's usually called a program. So they can watch program, and then as they're watching it, we get their responses. The other thing you can get then, of course, is in the switcher, we've added the feature to mute the off-screen cams now. So in the switcher, you can take an ISO or a single shot of one of the fans. So if you've got 20 fans, you can say, okay, the guy in the blue sweatshirt, I want to talk to him for a minute. And so in the switcher, you can focus him and have him be the single shot. And then you can have that two-way conversation. Now, the way you have to do that today is through an external switcher of some kind, which is, again, phase one. Our phase one target is actually, production companies doing things like the Stephen Colbert Show on TVs. And so they have the external ability to wire those two things together so that they can get their host, like Stephen, to actually talk to their guest because they can take our single shot of that single fan externally through their own hardware. So there is a line where we're going to, our phase one line, it will be usable to television production experts as the on-stage guest one-on-one conversation with a fan, but it won't be usable to you guys in a sort of in a single one-stop shop kind of dashboard experience, which is, really our phase two holy grail, where we would have the group of the four of us having our conversation and then be able to just yank someone out of the fan wall and drop them right into this group. So that's that is a much heavier lift.
So the fan wall, let's say I have some number of hundreds. Let's just say let's start with let's say there's 100 fans.
Okay.
On watching a broadcast, and I'll just use an example: a comedian who's got a room of 100 people.
Yep.
How long before the comedian could actually see? Well, one, I assume we're gonna have the same problem. There's a limit of how many streams from wherever that are coming back, right? So is that 6? Is that 8? Is that 10? How many fans do you see on a stream wall when you're not using the hardware, the specialized hardware that a TV program is using?
Yeah, I mean, a lot, because fortunately this is a case where the individual devices, so if you're a fan, all you see is the program and yourself in a little picture-in-picture. You don't see the other fans.
Right.
So on your device as a fan, there's no kind of hardware limit there.
Okay.
So imagine you've got 20 of those people all watching one stream in, that's the program, and one stream up, which is their own camera. And in the cloud, we can take all 20 of those and drop them into the browser.
It's kind of like being in a big Zoom room, right? Where I've been in a Zoom room with hundreds of people, but they're all muted,
right,
while the speaker is talking, right?
And you don't see them in a grid of 100 people all on screen at the same time. Yeah.
Right. So, back at my example, let's say a comedian's got 100 people.
Yep.
They can all see him.
Yep.
Potentially you can cut over to the fan wall while people are laughing, right? It's
correct.
Like equivalent of when.
That's exactly right.
When you see the crowd shot when Chris Rock is doing his Netflix special.
Yep. That's it.
So how long until you have that kind of capability, if you will?
So that we're shooting for Wednesday.
So Wednesday you would be able to, but Wednesday with the TV production, or Wednesday with like what we're doing?
Kind of in the middle. It would be still manual in terms of how you bring it into your event, but I'll just get a tiny bit technical here. Paul, if you want to follow along here, what you do is you have it's the combination of our two features. The single stream of the fan wall goes out to over RTMP, and then you can go to that single stream with a virtual camera on another computer and take that single stream in as a feed into your show. So you need a virtual camera, and you need a computer, and you need a human to set that up. But that's all commodity level stuff. You don't need to be a broadcast company. You don't need 30 people on your team to pull that off. You don't need a hardware switcher. So you need to basically be able to have a computer that can see the grid, the fan wall grid, and then you wire that up as a virtual camera as an input into a conversation like we're having today.
Yep.
And now it's just in the switcher. So it would just be like, yep, switch to the fan wall. And
so you essentially
that's all doable on Wednesday.
Yeah. So you essentially have almost like two simultaneous conversations that you're
meshing. You do, yes. Exactly. It's together. 2 projects. In fact, even in StreamClick itself, it's 2 different projects. So you got your one project for your production and then your other project for your fan wall. And eventually what we're wanting to do is merge those into one big sort of, gift wrapped package inside the dashboard, so that there would be a little, click on the audience tab, and then you would see your audience there and make your selections and wire that all out together. So that's kind of bigger picture, longer vision for over the remainder of the year. That kind of thing is definitely on our roadmap.
So how does it work with sound? Has anybody got to the point where even without video coming back, you can have like real laughter real time? Like where
it's the same problem for us. It's whether you have your cam muted or not is kind of almost irrelevant. You can turn off the video, but you could just take sound in. We don't have currently the ability to switch sound only, like switch audio only in our switcher. But that again would be a very, very quick feature to build. If we decided, we'd like to pipe in the laughter from the audience without switching to the fan wall, that would just be, imagine I tell Emerson to do that in the morning, he's done by the end of the day, probably.
So what is the latency on that? Because didn't you say that one of the feeds, the fan wall feed was RTMP?
Doesn't have to be. So let me just make sure I get this right. So yes, the latency there is going to be a little bit of a delay in what we're doing right now. So the latency would be about a second or so between the fan seeing the program and then you hearing the fan respond to the program. So that is definitely something where there's room for improvement still. The program can be instant because it's a virtual camera to the fan over WebRTC. The return feed of the fan wall back into the program is where you get the latency right now, because we have to composite it in the cloud. And right now, the way we're sending the composited single stream anywhere is over RTMP, and that introduces about a second delay in our test with millicast. Ideally, longer term, and you mentioned this earlier today, is just can we get off of WebRTC and just be doing everything, all the single streaming and all of the outputs natively, for example, to Phoenix or to millicast or wherever you're outputting. So it is we believe it's technically possible to go out of the cloud as a single stream over WebRTC using FFmpeg. However, we haven't tested it, and the little bit of research I did do said that it's not necessarily just slam dunk, plug it in, and it just all works. So I don't want to promise anything there, but that's obviously, if you can go pure WebRTC end to end, that is obviously the long-term goal. And I believe that it's something that to get fan wall perfect, so that you can get the instant responses from the audience, then we would have to get there eventually. But within the next couple of months, I don't think on our current roadmap, we wouldn't be trying to get it down less than anything like a second.
So another use case, maybe not as aggressive, would be just, and this sounds more doable. Mm-hmm. In our particular case, we're adding the ability to kind of upgrade your experience by spending more peaks during a broadcast, right?
Right.
So you want to get on the fan wall. You buy your way in, mm-hmm. and that gives you, your 15 seconds of fame.
Right.
And we're cycling people through the fan wall, so that they're. I'm sure you've seen Andy Cohen does this. He's got the 8, 10 people, they'll let them ask a question, and it's actually honestly somewhat lame. The television experience is like, okay, who cares that you got 8 or 10 people in windows? I'm watching my TV set. But the idea that during a panel, like the Walking Dead panel, the fact that you're kind of in the VIP seats, and then you get to ask a question, or there's probably a bunch of things that we could do just so that your picture, you can't talk, but your picture is up, as a super fan on the broadcast with Norman Reedus or whatever. So I think there's definitely there's definitely some even at the basic level, some really cool things we could do real quickly. It's just a matter of figuring out like what's the feature set that is available when. And then what. So we're going to be. I think we mentioned this. We're going to be doing a lot of hybrid events, where as the New York Comic-Cons, those kinds of events, the pop culture events, festivals. Think about, festivals. These rock stars, right, are not going to want to do meet and greets like they used to just because of COVID, right?
For sure, yeah.
At least some of them. Yep. So I would see at a festival, literally people either on their phones or walking up to a booth where you're meeting the band prior to the show or after the show virtually, and it's still it's not as good as being in person, but it's still an upgraded experience from not meeting them. So figuring out how we can pull groups in, like 10 people meeting the band at once, and just a lot of different use cases like that, right? Where and then if you're happen to be in Germany and the show is in Tampa, you can still participate. So I guess when will you be able to demo what is available that we would be able to use from a fan wall perspective?
I mean, I can show you some of the workflow today if you wanted to see it, but to actually see it end to end so that you get the full fan experience, which I think maybe is a better idea to wait for that, but would be, so we're aiming to ship by Wednesday, which means that optimistically it will be Thursday. I don't know if you wanted me to give you my confidence rating. It's like 95% chance it'll be Thursday, but if something goes wrong, we can set it up for a few days shortly after that. But that's our goal, is just ship it on Wednesday.
Honestly, it doesn't matter whether it's Wednesday, Saturday, or from that Saturday.
Yeah. But
I
next week or the week after, basically.
Yeah, we definitely want to see it.
Yep.
I mean, don't forget we're in the software delivery business, so we get asked that question all the time. So and we know you don't always have it the way you want to show it, on time. So yeah, I would say let's. I think I have a good understanding of what you're doing now. I actually do understand, for example, an OBS virtual camera. So I get what the possibilities might be. The question is, how can we make it? Well, at first, it's going to take experts, right, to make sure everything's operating correctly. But how can we get it to a point where we can have somebody who's not so sophisticated say, "Oh, I want a virtual fan wall."
Right.
because again, the magic of peak will be that you'll have thousands of broadcasters that the scenario isn't necessarily going to be a TV program. It's going to be Hulk Hogan goes in his backyard and wants to do a weightlifting class, right?
Right.
And
yeah.
How
awesome.
can we make it so that he can create, if he even needs to create, the virtual fan wall, right? Where he can see whatever 25 people on a screen.
Right. Yeah, no, exactly. I'm sharing my screen now. Can you guys see it?
Yeah.
All right. I think it is worth just a sneak peek at the workflow here. Okay. Because one thing I feel like we are on the same trajectory. Peak and StreamClick are basically traveling down, roughly speaking, the same path with some degrees of freedom. However, there are two things that I think that are where we don't have alignment, and that we got to work on. We would have to work on over time as partners, the deeper we get in. Number one, you guys are moving faster than us. And I just got to be candid and honest about that. I mean, we're a smaller team. We have less resources behind us. So when you're thinking about, I'd love to do this, if Hulk's got an event on April 20th, ain't no way we're going to get there in time. But see you in July or see you in September or something like that. That's number one, is in terms of like places where we would have to work together to get more aligned. The other is in terms of just approachability. Again, this is kind of our current main target, and it's partly a fact of our just level of staffing and the size of our engineering team. But our main target is prosumer. So when will this become available? I'll show you some stuff today that if you are Paul Roth, you can do this, but if you're Hulk Hogan, you almost certainly can't. And so those are the two things just to bear in mind. So I'll show you what we've got, but that doesn't mean we can't cross those bridges. It's just, honestly, to me, it's just a question of money.
Right.
It ends up being like, can we fund a team to A, get it done faster, and to B, make it more approachable so that the Hulks of the world can actually pull it off without a broadcast engineer. But let me give you a really quick sneak peek, and I think Paul will appreciate kind of understanding how this workflow kind of plays out. So let's say we want to invite Chris to our show as a fan. Right now, there's nothing in the dashboard right now that says add fan, and there's actually not planned to be anything that's specific to the fan wall explicit language, because it's not always a fan. It's a virtual audience, and sometimes it'll just be a way to wire in cameras. So we're keeping it a little bit more generic, but I'll talk about it as though we're a fan wall. So if you wanted to invite Chris to your fan wall, you now select edit or in broadcast only mode. So now he's just sending out his camera, and he's not going. He might or might not get something in return. But this is sort of one side of the equation. Is you got to make it so that he doesn't get crushed by 1,000 other fans. Well, let's say 20 other fans in his broadcast. So that's the broadcast only mode. Meanwhile, over in feeds, you would add a feed, and under here you would now select a StreamClick camera as a feed. And so this is just another source. You give it a name if you want to. It's just exactly like a host or a guest invitation, except that it's a specialized feed that we then, so you can set like the position and the password, just like you would want to if you wanted to set this up as something you don't want people to mess with your program feed. But now you can say the visibility here is broadcast only participants. So this is your return feed going back out to the fan. So this is your hockey game or your baseball game or your comedian up on stage. You would wire that program feed into StreamClick as a StreamClick camera, and then click add, and then it shows up, and here it is. So now that becomes, you can enable it or disable it, and that becomes a a feed that goes back to Chris, who's the fan watching the Hulk Hogan, weightlifting class. Now, so that's kind of the workflow. What you're not seeing is what it looks like to be the fan watching the return, watching the hockey game. And you're not seeing the grid. So we now need that wall to appear as a single stream. And those two things, again, are already done. They just need to get shipped and finished and polished and released on Wednesday. So that's kind of, I guess, the nuts and bolts of it. That's how the system will work in as soon as next week. And using those building blocks, you can make your fan wall. And then can Hulk make it? Probably not.
Right. Well, why don't we
but
do
Hulk's
this?
Broadcast team could.
We're going to be, laser focused, rehearsing and getting ready for next Sunday.
Yep.
So next week isn't good for us anyway, but maybe the week after that, let's get back and take a look at, the fan wall, and then maybe schedule another follow-up meeting on what we might be able to do strategically from biz dev and alignment on strategic plans, because again we're coming at this, we got a lot of momentum with a lot of talent. We were on with 21 Pilots yesterday, and there's just a lot of other things besides broadcasting where talent, unlockable content, NFTs that we've got, coming here. So we've got a lot of pieces to this. There's nothing wrong with having facilities that out of the gate, Hulk Hogan isn't going to be able to use, right? He can use, if he wants to go live on his mobile phone and meet people, we've got that, right? Which is a really unique offering in the market. But we haven't even released that mobile app part yet, because we're going to make sure that it's 100% dummy proof. And so there's pieces of this marketplace where we can look and say, there's going to be there's a lot of ways to create a professional production, right? Like if you're 21 Pilots and you're creating a virtual concert, which most of these guys aren't live streaming anyway, they're videotaping it, right? So you can go into a studio and create the tape. That's not necessarily the market that we're seeing. It's how can we make almost like Zoom? How does Megaphone and Peak become as easy as Zoom for somebody to make money? And really, that's what it comes down to: is how do we give tools to talent to have them make money? Right. And I mean, you can see how Cameo's worth $1 billion because they were smart enough to say, hey, videotape something and we'll send an email with a videotape, with the birthday. I mean, it's not deep technology, right? It was just a good idea and they got the talent. So, so let's circle back and figure out where we might be able to go in the marketplace. Right. Because we're going to see things and have access to things that, are door openers that a lot of startups don't have the benefit of, because they're not starting with necessarily the network that we're starting with. and so we're also focused. We're hopefully, knock on wood, we're going to have a collection of NFL Hall of Fame athletes that are looking at making an investment in Peak, and
Cool.
Opening up our whole Peak Sports.
Yeah.
So now you start to think about, okay, how do we do things that are tailored to the sports fan and the sports celebrity, right? So,
right, yeah.
Most NFL running backs are not going to walk in and look at a screen like you just showed us, right?
Nope.
So how do we, how do we make it not even as easy as StreamYard, because that's not going to necessarily.
No, no, it's even more commodity.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, appreciate your time on a, on a Saturday morning on a holiday weekend. It's definitely a testament to how partner friendly you guys are, and I know we're going to do some great things together.
I mean, I live and breathe this stuff, and this is our dream and our passion. So I'm up night and day, whatever it takes to launch the rocket ship. And I think that we've just got a really, it's just such a close alignment on what we see, what we want to build, that it makes sense to just keep on pursuing it. So I'm very grateful for your willingness to continue the conversation.
Cool.
And I just think that we wouldn't be here if we didn't think it was a big opportunity.
Sounds good. Paul, I got to roll just because I'm already in the doghouse.
All right. All good. Thanks so much, Colin.
I went in and I woke up my wife. She goes, "Wait, isn't today Saturday?" I go, "Yeah." Anyway, all right. Thanks, Colin.
Thank you, Scott. Paul, do you want to hang on for 2 minutes
Sure.
so I can wipe some egg off my face and show you the single streamer?
Sure.
Because it's not real until I've demoed it.
Okay.
So I'm still sharing my screen. So I'll just show you. Here's our channel. So if you pop that out, I'll give you the link to this in a second. So it's egs.streamclickdev.com, but just keep watching the screen share for now. It's just a little easier for a second, and then I'll get you to crack open your phone. So my Wi-Fi went down, so I'm tethered to my phone. So bear with any internet connection issues that might appear. So here is a single stream, one mute button. So this is actually just a 16:9, resizes. There you go. So that's and now you're getting my screen share. Actually, let me kill the screen share. I can't. All right. Yeah. So we're going to get the Hall of Mirrors, but this is our single stream. And I'll close it. And you can see here it's coming from the channel broadcast panel here. And now, if you could just on your phone go to egs.streamclickdev.com, and I'll go there as well so I can prove that it's working.
egs.streamclick.com?
Streamclickdev, egs.streamclickdev.com. And what you should see there is the single channel feed.
Yeah, I see it.
Now, just while you're there, you can also see this is going out to YouTube at the same time. So you can see here's our YouTube stream. I can also share that, and but this was working before. That's how you were streaming out to Phoenix. But I just want to show you that they happen at the same time. And I'm now going to end my screen share. so that you can see with your own eyes what it looks like when it's kind of less of the hollow mirrors, and it goes back to full screen. So you can even do a test if you want to hear your own audio. You can hear what the latency is like. And there you go. You know, just wanted to to prove it. This is it. It's really running and it's live now. This is it. It's really running and it's live now. This is it. It's really running and it's live now. This is it. It's really running.
We get the infinite loop.
Yeah.
Now, when I go landscape, let's see, it puts it off to the left and brings up the chat.
That's right. Or you can, of course, hide the chat.
Yeah, I can.
As in, we can turn the chat off entirely if you want, to on our end.
Right.
You can, if you click the little X button, you should be able to collapse the chat.
It's not working. When I hit the X, it doesn't work on mine. Now I don't know, I'm on Chrome on my iPhone. Maybe it's,
okay.
Maybe it works on Safari and not Chrome.
Yeah, or, you know, it just might be a little bug. One or the other. I have to admit, you know, mobile landscape hasn't gotten a ton of testing for collapse and show chat. We're still working on the core fundamentals. And so those kind of like that final little bit of polish, there's likely to be little rough edges in there, here and there.
Sure. You try it on.
So my phone is collapsing under this stream. Right. So I'm going to close it on my end. But yeah, it's working for me in Safari. The collapse chat was working for me in Safari.
I'm going over to Safari.
And the other fun thing we can do now is, of course, mute cams, which, there's just a nice little checkbox for that now.
Yeah, it works in Safari, not in Chrome.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Well, there you go. Just uninstall Chrome and the bug's fixed.
Yeah. Yeah, this is nice.
Yeah, I mean, it's how it should have been. And it's, you know, I think had I known, Paul, you know, who Peak was, who you and Scott were, and what was at stake, I would have said, hold on. They cannot go live without single stream, and we don't have it yet. So we've got to work. That's got to get sorted out, or we can't do this event. And that's hindsight 2020. But we have it now. So, and in all, it's almost a blessing in disguise, I think, for you to experience life in another pair of shoes, or just, you know, ask another girl to dance at the ball kind of thing, and just see what it's like to use StreamYard and to have a real valid, viable A/B comparison, even to execute the event and experience what it's like to execute the event in that other tool, and then to come back to StreamClick and reevaluate, well, what are the things that make it better, or, you know, just to have that point of comparison, I think is useful for you guys, and it's ultimately going to make our collaboration stronger, and our two teams better, for you to have visibility into what the alternatives are.
So you don't have, agreed. You don't have the ability to have one screen bigger than the other?
We don't right now, but I mean, the reason we don't is because it's so easy that all the little easy stuff gets just pushed to the back, and like, yeah, we'll get to that in May. You know, there's going to be a little phase you'll see happening probably post-launch. So like we'll probably do e-commerce and trial next. And then as soon as that ships, 1.1, like our next, or 2.1, our next major push will be, you want to put borders around the cameras. You want to, you know, customize the spacing between the cameras, the gap in the grid. You want to have a few layouts. So like cosmetic, easy to build, cosmetic flourish and customizability and like different wipes. So you should not. You get a bit seasick as the grid is moving around, and so you want some hard cuts. There's a layer of cosmetic polish on the paint job that we want to allow to put in the hands of users as a just customizable layer. So maybe you want rounded edges on your borders or whatever the hell you want. And just, it's basically customize the theme or the visual presentation layer. And honestly, give us a week to build that stuff, and that'll all just be kind of a native part of the system.
Yeah, that all seems to be
easy,
real high value. I think you get a lot return on
super high value. Yeah. Super important. It's mission critical, and it's table stakes, but it's also not a hard problem, and it's not core fundamental functionality. So like, how do we get 8 streams composited in the cloud and then output those to RTMP so that they can come back in as a return feed into another project? That's more, that's more like the lower level stuff problems that we've been solving.
Output them to WebRTC, which is
for example, which
is what I talked to Ryan after you talked to him, I guess, a couple of times, and then he reached out.
Oh, did he? Okay, yeah.
And so he was giving me his roadmap, and they're planning to make the APIs available so that anyone can use their system to do composition like StreamClick is doing, right? But you'll be able to do it through their APIs, do it yourself, which is interesting. I mean, you can do that. You can do that